Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Let's Analyze! Today we're going to analyze the Sketchy Summer Banner featuring Linde, whatever, I'll just keep calling her Diaochan, and Camilla. The silhouette they gave us the other day was so obvious that I guess even our Chinese spies didn't care to spoil it. But anyway, the main feature of today's banner are the Desperation Weapons. The Starfish, the Fishie bow, and a Juicy Wave, they all carry Desperation 3 built in. Now, this completely power creeps the old school Linde Soulkati, though how useful that actually is? Well, I guess that will be the first main topic of the day. So the main deal of these things is that they free up the B slot that you would otherwise have used for Desperation. Well then, let's start by discussing B skills that you can use in these slots. Now remember, these weapons are currently all range, so you can't use certain B skills like Wrath. Maybe later they'll have melee versions of these things. Okay, so let's start things off with Brash Assault. Brash Assault is a classic at this point. Using it as a seal gives you the ability to use yet another B slot, so you can muster up some other crazy combination. Or you can instead bolster your attack or use some other fancy trick if you were to put in your B slot and use your seal slot for those things. Brash Assault also comes with the bonus of cancelling out stuff like Enemy Breaker or Worry Fighter. It's actually a much better skill than it looks. Of course, the main catch is that you gotta lose more health. You gotta lose like 50% of your health. Though that shouldn't be too big of a deal, as most of the speedy beat sticks these days are pretty frail since all their stats went into attack and speed. Practically everything nowadays is like 35 or above. So they're pretty frail when it comes to their defenses. So you just gotta take care not to die in one hit, especially from a skill off of a counterattack. Which leads to my next B slot. So Guard. Guard is one of those things that you can equip and shut down enemy skill-based defenses from use of skills such as Steady Breath, or Vengeful Fighter, or Heavy Blade. With this, your speedy beat sticks can kill a unit, get hurt from a counter attack, but finish off their opponents on the next attack without having to worry about, say, Zelgis and his Black Luna ruining your day. So, third option is Bold Fighter. Bold Fighter is another deadly skill, but as of right now, only LA Lin and Halloween Jacob can benefit from this. Though probably more so for Lin, since there are no Fire Sweep Tomes at the moment, while Jacob could just simply grab a Fire Sweep ball and do such things without even having to worry about his health. If you run Moonbow with this setup, you can activate it on the second attack on a fresh enemy. It's pretty decent. Next are the Breaker skills. They work pretty well with this as well, both to help you get to below 75% by preventing a double attack, or to do evil Desperation double attacks. Provided, of course, you're fighting the right type of enemies anyway. Alright, so there's Dull Range and Dull Close as the next B slot option. They allow you to punch through an enemy or tank an enemy with buffs, though it's a bit situational. It's not a bad option. But just like the Breaker stuff, it's a bit situational, so there are times where it's just completely useless. Next up, we have Vantage. Vantage is pretty good, though not very synergetic as it does its own thing. The same can be said for Quick Repose. But seeing as most speedy beat sticks tend to float around the same speed tier, you could gain an advantage by tanking one hit and then ripping them apart instead. So it's kind of like your own little breaker, as long as you have more health. Next, you can run Cancel Affinity, but that's a little situational. There are other fun toys like Death Res Link, Feint Skills, chill skills. They're all fairly rare skills that I think honestly would fit much better on a support unit. But they're good if a B slot is scarce on your team and, you know, you've already got Desperation. Come on, guy. Go and equip the skill for us. Come on. That would be one of those times where you would equip such a skill when you need a B slot for some reason. Okay. Now, the other things that I could think of are stuff like Wings of Mercy or Escape Route, Flyer Formation, Aerobatics. These let your Desperation friend fly all over the map to snipe enemy units, to spread debuffs, etc, etc, etc. Now, all of these sounds really cool. The Desperation weapons are really cool. You can use your B slots and allow a flexible amount of skill combination. But honestly, is it really worth the effort to get these limited 5-star only weapons? I don't know. See, unfortunately, there are no B skills that currently could make up for the raw power of a Blade Tome. I can fully expect people kidding Camilla right now with that soon enough. As for bow, there's already a Fire Sweep bow. So getting this is kind of pointless unless you're looking for the extra stats that comes from refining. Which isn't really all that worth it either, since ranged units get a reduced amount. But who knows, it could come in handy, because as I said earlier, all the beat sticks, they have around the same speed. Yeah, 2 speed probably wouldn't be enough to make up that deficit. You need a whole lot more. Everybody just has the same stats these days. It makes these Desperation weapons a lot less effective, unless you have some guaranteed doubling going on here. Okay, anyway. As for daggers, now I think that could see a little bit more use. For example, the stars, they can inflict debuffs after taking down enemies. Say, okay, you use Savage Blow ×2, and you just finish somebody off with a double attack. The next opponent you will end up facing will eat a Dangerous Vantage. That adds up to a total of 21 damage on top of whatever the dagger user would have normally hit for. So 21. 14 is from the double Savage, and 7 from the defense reduction. So the stars could be pretty scary if you're using it in that way. Though, unfortunately, daggers themselves also have a lot of other fun options as well. Like Smoke Dagger's Severe Debuff, or Rogue Dagger's Stat Stealing, and of course the standard Slaying and Wadao Carrots options. So, Desperation weapons are kind of like, at the end of the day, they just seem pretty lackluster in my opinion, considering the other options that exists. And as such, I can't really recommend going for these things in good conscience. Hope you understand. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the characters themselves. The first is Diaochan Linde. She has a stat spread of 34-35, which is pretty strong, but also pretty common, because Intelligence System only knows how to release speedy beatsticks at this point. Or really slow but tanky armor that has attack that goes up to 44. That said, this is the same crap. This is the same crap for all the heroes in this banner. So I'm just gonna show all their stats right now to get that out of the way, because I think that is they're very boring and quite frankly not worth my time. I suppose I can also make this another case where, you know, Desperation is just not that great. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. It's just not that great. You're competing speed with everybody who has the same stats. It's incredibly stale. This whole meta is stale, and I hate it. Alright, as for the skills she has, Brazen Attack Res is the only other thing you are getting out of her. And honestly, not that interesting anymore, because Brazen Attack Dev is now the 4-star thing. I suppose it could come in handy when you fight dragons, but on a frail offensive range unit, that skill is completely wasted. Next up, we talk about the very boring Summer Tiki. Intelligent Systems knows that people prefer lolly Tiki more than adult Tiki. So they slip her in a swimsuit, give her powerful stats, a powerful pref weapon, and set up shop. The summer breath that she's gotten has, well, built-in steady breath. Sort of, except the dev can be used in both phases. It is effective against dragons, and though not listed due to a screw-up, it also carries standard adaptive damage that all breaths have. In practice, this is pretty much the same boring setup that most dragons have, but hey, it's now on a flying unit! And, you have to sacrifice a Hector instead. Whatever. So, compared to Mirth, she pretty much has the same double negation, except, through sheer speed instead. She has 37 base speed. And due to this speed, she can also go on the offensive and actually pick fights. Although her breath doesn't have any player phase use except against dragons and ranged units, so do keep that in mind. Now, what Mirth does have over Tiki though, is that she actually has pretty good resistance to ploy with. The Great Flame itself is also effective against Bold Fighter armor that generally floats around the same speed tier as her. See, how it works is that it cancels out the second attack, because guaranteed follow-up and preventing follow-ups conflict, so these two just cancels each other out. So, as long as she has the same speed tier as within 2 speed or greater of the enemy, and that they have 5 more defense, Mirth has 5 more defense against the armor she fights anyway. Whereas Tiki, if she gets faced with a bold fighter armor unit, she'll get hit twice no matter what. Therefore, although her breath is pretty damn strong, she doesn't quite eclipse Mirth just yet. Now, as for her native skills, Tiki does come with the attack dev bond to emulate her Breath of Fog effect. It's really cute, except that it's restricted to one range and it's not that great on her. Other than that, she doesn't really have anything else of note. Dragon Valor is whatever. So, just slap on a wonderful Ayot Shield seal. God, I'm mixing words up. And you have a pretty decent unit that can do pretty much everything. Except effective against dragon units, of course. Alright, next we have Takumi, who looks uncharacteristically happy. His big gaping mouth and expression terrifies me. He's the second Kinshi riding bold flyer in the game. His 35-35 stat spread is boring and uninteresting. Ugh. Well, the only original skill he has is the odd res wave, which is pretty terrible. Takumi can be safely ignored with no consequences. And finally, we have Summer Camilla, also known as Boobasaurus Blue. Like the others, she has the Desperation Weapon. She power creeps Summer Korin by 2 attack and 2 speed, and also comes with the rare flyer formation, though it's no longer important because that is a seal now. She also has the premium home flyer, that's 5-star only, so that she can be, ironically, sacrificed to another flyer in order to buff her if you don't have a Hinoka or a Witch Naui or a Dancer, flying New York Azura handy. God, I've got brain damage. I can't even think of these units anymore. Anyway, so yeah. All in all, while Summer Camilla does outperform Summer Korin, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter all that much because all flyers become monsters with flyer buffs. I'm talking about not just home flyers, but gold flyers as well. And considering the way AI work, you can do Blabber Blade dive bombs just fine. There's absolutely no need to replace Summer Coin with her for a small stat increase unless you like spending money and demand perfection. Which, sad to say, there's no such thing as long as power creep exists. And that's pretty much it for my analysis of the Summer Banner. My conclusion? Pretty damn boring. At least Tana and Noir add something new, but even then, I'm not really in a hurry to spend for those two. Alright, now, before we end today, let's do a quick review of the new weapon Refinery as well, since I don't feel like making a whole new video just to talk about a few things. Now, the first weapon is the Draconic Poleax. In essence, an emerald weapon with 4 extra might and 3 extra HP. So in a way, just think of it as a power creep character with 7 more BST using an emerald weapon. Pretty boring, I know, which is a shame because emerald weapon was actually a pretty entertaining boss fight. Now, after refining, the Draconic Poleax does give res tactics as its second skill. This is actually quite interesting as it's pretty handy because Titania can now run 3 tactic skills at once while being more than able to hold her own thanks to her emerald weapon. So blue units, no matter what happens, won't be able to do much to her, which allows her allies to take on other skills instead. The second toy is the Dauntless Lance. So it's basically a slaying lance and slaying spear combined, giving it 2 more might, cooldown reduction, and effectiveness against armored units that are all the rage right now. Its second effect is a +4 speed and dev stance. With this, Nephany can gear herself up for the enemy phase, like say, I don't know, with steady breath. That way she can take a hit, and then pay the enemy back with a deadly, instant wrath-powered bonfire. Though she could also aim for Ignis too if she's sure to hit another time, or if she's using Quick Riposte. No, not Quick Riposte, oh my god, Quick and Post. Alternatively, you can also cast aside the defensive stances and instead pick out either attack or speed. She can run Fury with that thing, and you can still unleash a powerful Wrath Bonfire at the end of a second attack, or at the first attack, if you use Quick and Pulse, for both player phase and enemy. No, it would suck for player phase, my bad. It's better to not use Quick and Pulse. Anyways, which allows her more flexibility because you get a Wrath Bonfire at the end of the second hit for both phases. I personally go that route if I actually keep my Nephanies, but Wrath is simply too good of a skill, so it's gonna be a while. Next, we have Katarina with Reese's Peanut Butter Tome. Now this thing is an upgraded version of her native Owl Tome by 4 whole might. That thing also provides speed and Resploid too. Honestly, it is a really scary setup. In that way, Kat can just sit somewhere and wait for her enemies to come with all of her allies nearby, buffing her stats to the extreme, while using her ploys to weaken the enemies into submission. If you still have that 4-star Takumi laying around, the new Kit Kat and her Reese's Peanut Butter Tome will more than fulfill your close counter needs. I highly recommend that setup with her native attack ploy. Together, she can even make her originally pitiful defenses look good. As for Eldigan, I think that he should just leave the Dark Mistletoe to his son, who is both more common and more suited for its use. Eldigan's Fury 6 is quite entertaining and is a unique show of force that only he can have. But I guess if you already have a fully built Eldigan and wants to spend your resources, I suppose it doesn't really hurt to have more options. Alright, and with that, we end tonight's programming. I thank you all for watching. Until next time.